The alarm screamed through every corridor of New Haven Colony. Red emergency lights painted the walls in blood colors as people ran toward the shelters. Children cried in their parents' arms while others stumbled in panic, trying to reach safety before the next attack came. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the central command room, his eyes fixed on the large screen showing the space above their colony. The enemy ships looked like massive insects made of metal and flesh, hundreds of them blocking out the stars. They had been attacking for 3 days straight, and the colony's defenses were almost gone. The Krell had come without warning. Nobody knew where they came from or why they attacked. They just appeared in space one morning and started destroying everything. Other colonies had sent distress signals before going silent. New Haven was next on their list. Lieutenant Amy Parker sat at her station, her fingers moving fast across the controls. Her face was pale and tired. She had not slept in 2 days. None of them had. Commander, the outer shields just failed. We have maybe 5 hours before they break through the main defense. Jake felt his stomach twist. 5 hours. That was all the time left for 20,000 people living below ground. He looked at the tactical display again. The colony's few defense guns were still firing, but they barely scratched the enemy ships. The Krell just kept coming, wave after wave. Keep the distress beacon running, Jake ordered, even though he knew it was probably useless. They had been calling for help for 3 days. The nearest military fleet was weeks away. Nobody was coming to save them. Chief Engineer Marcus Cole worked at another console, sweat dripping down his face. I've pushed every bit of power we have into the shields and the beacon. If anyone is listening out there, they will hear us loud and clear. Jake wanted to believe that. He wanted to think that someone somewhere would hear their call and come to help. But deep down, he knew the truth. New Haven was too far from the core systems, too isolated, too unimportant. They were going to die here, and nobody would even know until weeks later when the next supply ship arrived to find ruins. The building shook hard. Dust fell from the ceiling. On the screen, one of the defense platforms exploded in a bright flash. The Krell were getting closer. "Get me Captain Helen Morris," Jake said to Amy. "If we only have 5 hours, I want every person who can hold a weapon on the defense lines." Helen's face appeared on a smaller screen. She looked exhausted but determined. "I heard, Commander. My teams are already moving into position. We'll hold them as long as we can," Jake nodded. Helen was good at her job. She had trained the colony's small security force well. But they were security guards, not soldiers. They had never been meant to fight a real war. Another explosion rocked the command center. Warning sounds filled the air. Marcus cursed and worked faster at his station. That was Defense Platform 7. "We're down to 3 platforms now." On the main screen, something new appeared. A ship much larger than the others came out from behind the swarm. It was massive, easily 3 times bigger than anything they had seen before. Its surface glowed with strange lights pulsing like a living heart. "What is that?" Amy whispered. Marcus checked his readings and his face went even paler. "That's a carrier ship. A big one. The readings say it's carrying at least 50,000 ground troops inside." The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Krell were not just going to destroy the colony from space. They were going to land troops. They were going to hunt down every last person hiding in the shelters. Jake stared at the massive ship. He had seen reports from other colonies before they fell. The Krell ground forces were fast and vicious. They worked together like parts of one mind, and they never stopped until everything was dead. "All units," Jake said into the colony-wide communication system. His voice was calm even though his heart was racing. "This is Commander Morrison. The enemy is preparing to land ground forces. Everyone who can fight, get to your assigned defensive positions. Everyone else, stay in the shelters and seal the doors. We will hold them back. We will protect you. This is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have." He switched off the microphone and sat down heavily in his chair. Amy looked at him with worried eyes. "Do you really think we can hold them?" Jake wanted to lie. He wanted to say yes, that everything would be fine. But he respected his crew too much for that. "No, but we can make them pay for every meter they take. We can buy time for the people in the shelters. Maybe someone will receive our distress call. Maybe help will come. And if it doesn't," Marcus asked quietly. "Then we die fighting," Jake said simply. "Better than waiting in a hole for the end." The massive carrier ship moved closer to the colony. Jake could see smaller shapes detaching from its surface. Landing craft. Hundreds of them. The invasion was beginning. Then something impossible happened. Lisa Grant, the young woman at the communications station, suddenly sat up straight. Her hands flew across her controls. "Commander!" "I'm getting a response to our distress beacon." Jake jumped to his feet. "What? From who?" "The signal is coming from Earth itself, sir. And it's not just one ship. I'm detecting multiple signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of our system." "How many ships?" Jake demanded, hardly daring to hope. Lisa's eyes went wide as she read the data. 15. No, 20. "No, they're still coming. Sir, these readings are enormous. I've never seen ships this big before." On the main screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Brilliant white light flashed across the darkness as ship after ship appeared. They were not the small patrol craft or exploration vessels Jake was used to seeing. These were warships. Real warships. Massive and powerful and covered in weapons. The first ship to fully appear was so large it made the Krell carrier look small. Its hull was dark gray metal, and weapons bristled from every surface. On its side, in huge letters, was written a name that made Jake's heart soar with hope: Earth Warship Titan's Hammer. More ships appeared behind it. Battleships and carriers and destroyers, an entire fleet materializing out of nothing. Jake counted 30 ships, then 40, then stopped counting because more kept arriving. The communications screen flickered and a man's face appeared. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and scars on his face. His eyes were hard and cold, the eyes of someone who had seen many battles. "New Haven Colony, this is Admiral Richard Blake of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call." The Admiral paused, and then he smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had found his prey. "Sorry we're late to the party. We came as fast as we could." Behind the Admiral, through the window of his ship's bridge, Jake could see dozens more warships taking formation. They moved with perfect precision, like a pack of wolves preparing to attack. "We've come a long way to be here," Admiral Blake continued. His voice was calm but filled with quiet anger. "Now let's show these bugs what happens when they threaten human colonies. All ships prepare to engage. Let's light them up." Jake sank back into his chair, barely able to believe what he was seeing. Earth had sent a fleet, a real military fleet with enough firepower to level planets. They had not been abandoned after all. Amy was crying quietly, tears of relief running down her face. Marcus was laughing, almost hysterical with joy. On the main screen, the Earth fleet began moving forward, weapons charging up. The Krell carrier tried to turn, sensing the new threat. But it was too slow, too late. The battle for New Haven was about to begin. And this time, humanity was bringing the fight to the enemy. The Krell swarm reacted instantly to the arrival of Earth's fleet. The massive carrier ship changed direction, turning its attention away from the colony toward this new threat. Smaller attack ships peeled away from their assault positions, forming into groups that numbered in the thousands. They moved like a school of fish, all turning at exactly the same moment. On New Haven's surface, Commander Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with amazement. The Earth ships were moving with perfect coordination. Every vessel knew exactly where to go and what to do. This was not some rescue mission thrown together in a hurry. This was a military force that had trained for exactly this kind of fight. "All civilian shelters stay in lockdown," Jake ordered across the colony communication system. "Earth's military is here. Hold your positions and let them work." On the bridge of the Titan's Hammer, Admiral Richard Blake stood with his hands behind his back. His executive officer, Commander Nathan Cross, stood beside him reading data from his console. "Sir, enemy attack craft approaching. We count about 4,000 individual ships," Nathan reported calmly. Blake did not look worried. "Let them come. Weapons officer, you are cleared to engage when ready. Show them what we brought." Lieutenant Frank Hayes sat at the weapons station, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Yes, sir. With pleasure." The Krell fighters closed the distance quickly. They were fast, much faster than most ships humans built. Their hulls were partly organic, covered in what looked like insect shells. As they got closer, they opened fire. Thousands of living projectiles shot through space toward the Earth fleet. The weapons looked like glowing balls of green plasma. What happened next would be talked about for years to come. The Titan's hammer did not try to dodge. It did not need to. Defense systems all along its hull activated at the same time. Thousands of small guns fired together, creating a wall of metal bullets traveling at incredible speeds. The Krell attack wave simply disappeared. One moment there were thousands of enemy ships. The next moment there was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. "Railgun batteries ready, sir," Frank reported. "Fire at will," Blake ordered. The Titan's hammer's main guns fired. These were not normal weapons. They used magnetic force to launch huge chunks of metal at speeds close to light itself. 6 massive railguns fired one after another. The metal slugs crossed the distance to the Krell carrier in seconds. The impacts were devastating. The slugs punched through the carrier's armor like it was paper. Huge explosions blossomed across the alien ship's surface. Atmosphere and fluids vented into space, freezing instantly. The carrier shuddered from the hits, but it was tough. Very tough. The holes in its hull began to close up as living tissue grew to seal the wounds. The carrier returned fire with its own plasma cannons, massive weapons that could melt through normal ship armor. "Shields holding at 93%, Nathan reported. "Their weapons are strong, but not strong enough to hurt us." Blake nodded with satisfaction. "Deploy all fighter wings. Clear the space around New Haven. I want every Krell ship destroyed." The Earth carriers opened their launch bays. Hundreds of small fighter craft shot out into space. These were not the basic, clunky ships that colonies used for defense. These were cutting-edge war machines called Valkyries. They were fast, heavily armed, and flown by pilots who had trained for years. Captain Danny Price led one squadron of fighters. He was a veteran pilot who had flown in dozens of combat missions around Mars and the asteroid belt. "Viper Squadron, form up on my wing. Time to show these bugs how humans fly." His wingman, Lieutenant Sophie Martin, pulled her fighter into position beside him. Her voice came through the radio, excited and ready. "Copy that, Captain. Let's get to work." The Valkyrie fighters tore into the Krell swarm with brutal efficiency. Where the alien ships relied on numbers and instinct, the human pilots used skill and technology. Their missiles locked onto multiple targets at once. Their plasma cannons, reverse-engineered from captured alien tech and improved, burned through Krell armor easily. "Viper 2, I've got 6 on my tail," Sophie called out as enemy ships chased her through the battle. "On my way," Danny responded. He threw his fighter into a spinning roll that would have torn apart a weaker craft. He came up behind Sophie's pursuers and fired. 3 Krell fighters exploded in quick succession. "Make that 3 on your tail." "I've got the rest," Sophie said. She pulled her fighter through a tight loop, coming around behind the remaining enemies. Her missiles found their targets perfectly. More explosions lit up the darkness. Back on the Titan's hammer, Admiral Blake watched the battle unfold on the main display. The Krell were dangerous, yes. They were numerous and fierce. But they had never faced a force like Earth's military. They had grown used to attacking isolated colonies and undefended civilian ships. Now they were learning what happened when they met real soldiers. "Sir, the Hive carrier is trying to retreat," Nathan reported. Blake's expression hardened. "Negative. Do not let it escape. If even one ship makes it back to report what happened here, the enemy will learn our tactics. We need complete destruction. All battleships focus fire on that carrier. I want it dead now." 5 Earth battleships changed course, their massive forms moving with surprising grace for ships so large. They positioned themselves around the wounded Krell carrier and opened fire together. Hundreds of railgun rounds and dozens of missiles converged on the alien vessel from all sides. The carrier's regeneration could not keep up. Too much damage was happening too fast. Its hull cracked and split. Internal systems exploded. The ship's organic reactor went critical. The carrier's death was spectacular. It exploded from the inside out, a series of blasts that grew bigger and bigger until the entire ship came apart. The explosion was so bright that people on New Haven's surface could see it through the clouds. The remaining Krell forces, suddenly cut off from the carrier's coordination, fell into chaos. "All fighters hunt down every hostile," Blake commanded. "No survivors. No retreats. Total elimination." For the next 2 hours, Earth's forces systematically destroyed every remaining Krell ship. It was not a battle anymore. It was extermination. The Krell had come to wipe out a human colony. Instead, they had met the full fury of Earth's war machine. On New Haven's surface, people began emerging from their shelters. They looked up at the sky and saw it light up with the fires of burning alien ships. Children pointed at the massive Earth vessels hanging in orbit, dark shapes against the stars. The ships looked powerful and protective, like metal guardians watching over them. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the command center's observation deck. Chief Engineer Marcus Cole came to stand beside him. Marcus looked like he could barely believe what he was seeing. They actually came, Marcus said quietly. Earth sent their military all the way out here for us. Yeah, Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. They came. On the tactical display, the last Krell fighter was destroyed by a pair of Valkyries. Space around New Haven was clear. The colony was safe. Admiral Blake's face appeared on the communication screen again. New Haven colony, this is Admiral Blake. All hostile forces have been eliminated. The immediate threat is over. We're establishing a defensive perimeter around your colony now. Medical ships and supply transports are on their way. Jake activated his microphone. Admiral Blake, this is Commander Morrison. Sir, I don't know how to thank you. You saved 20,000 lives today. Blake's expression softened slightly. That's what we're here for, Commander. No human colony stands alone. Not anymore. We'll be sending shuttles down shortly. We have a lot to discuss about what happens next. The screen went dark. Jake looked out at the Earth fleet orbiting his colony. The ships were scarred from battle but still powerful and imposing. For the first time in 3 days, he felt hope. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. What do you think he meant by what happens next? Jake watched as the first Earth shuttle began its descent toward the landing pad. I think it means the galaxy just learned something new. It learned that when you attack humanity, Earth answers. And when Earth answers, it comes with everything it has. In orbit above, Admiral Blake stood on his bridge looking down at the colony his fleet had just saved. Commander Nathan Cross approached him with a datapad. Casualty report, sir. We lost 3 fighters and took minor damage to 2 destroyers. No fatalities. And the Krell? Blake asked. Total elimination. Every ship destroyed. No survivors detected. Blake nodded slowly. This battle was over, but he knew it was just the beginning. The Krell were out there somewhere with more ships and more hive carriers. They would come back. They would attack more colonies. But now Earth was ready. Now humanity had shown what it could do when pushed to fight. The Krell had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed humans would be easy prey. They had assumed wrong. The war was just beginning. And Earth was going to make sure the Krell regretted ever threatening humanity's children. The Earth fleet settled into orbit around New Haven like protective birds returning to their nest. Massive warships took up defensive positions, while smaller vessels began moving supplies and personnel down to the colony's surface. The transformation from desperate last stand to fortified military position happened in hours. Jake Morrison stood at the main landing pad, watching as the first shuttle touched down. Its landing gear hissed as it made contact with the concrete. The ramp lowered, and soldiers in full combat armor stepped out, taking positions around the landing zone. These were not the light security forces Jake commanded. These were professional warriors wearing powered armor that made them look like metal giants. Admiral Blake came down the ramp next, followed by Commander Nathan Cross and a security team. Blake looked older in person than he had on the view screen. Maybe in his late 50s with gray hair and deep lines in his face, but his eyes were sharp and alert, constantly taking in everything around him. Jake saluted. Commander Morrison, New Haven Defense Force, Admiral, we cannot thank you enough for what you did today. Blake returned the salute, then extended his hand. At ease, Commander. Your people held the line when it mattered. That takes real courage. They shook hands. Blake's grip was strong and calloused. This was not some politician playing soldier, Jake realized. This was a man who had earned his rank through actual combat. Walk with me, Commander, Blake said as they headed toward the command center. We need to talk about what comes next. As they walked, Jake noticed more shuttles landing. Soldiers were unloading equipment, setting up defensive positions, establishing a military presence. Admiral, how did you get here so fast? We're 3 weeks from the nearest fleet position, even at maximum faster than light speed. Blake exchanged a glance with Nathan before answering. Commander, what do you know about what's been happening in the core systems lately? Not much, Jake admitted. We get news updates every few weeks, but we're pretty isolated out here. Last I heard, the Krell had attacked a couple of outer colonies, but nothing that would justify a response like this. 17 colonies, Blake said quietly. The Krell have destroyed 17 human settlements in the past 8 weeks. New Haven would have been number 18. Jake stopped walking. The number hit him like a physical blow.
17?
That's over 100,000 people. 143,000, Commander Nathan Cross added, his voice flat and cold. Men, women, children. The Krell do not care who they kill. Blake continued walking, and Jake hurried to catch up. They entered the command center where Lieutenant Amy Parker and Marcus Cole waited. The staff came to attention when Admiral Blake entered. "At ease," Blake said, gesturing for everyone to sit. "Let me explain the situation. For the past 10 years, Earth has been preparing for this. We knew something dangerous was out there in the galaxy. Space is not safe, and humanity has been lucky so far. But luck runs out." He activated a holographic display showing ship designs and fleet positions. Earth has been secretly building a military force. 47 capital ships, 300 cruisers and destroyers, over 2,000 fighters. We've been training crews, developing new weapons, preparing for war. But the politicians wanted it kept quiet, Nathan explained. They did not want to alarm civilians or make humanity look aggressive to potential alien allies. So we built the fleet in secret, hiding it in deep space facilities. Then the Krell attacked, Blake continued. After the first colony fell, we knew we had to act. After the third colony, the politicians finally gave us permission to deploy. But we were too late to save most of them. Marcus Cole spoke up. "Admiral, you still haven't explained how you got here so fast. Even with a fleet this size, the travel time should have been weeks." "New faster-than-light technology," Nathan said. "Quantum slip drives. Experimental, but they work. We can cross distances in days that used to take weeks." Blake leaned forward, his expression serious. "Here's what you need to understand, Commander Morrison. The Krell are not just some random threat. Our intelligence suggests they're part of a larger swarm, one that spans multiple star systems. What you saw today was just an advance force, a scouting party." The room went very quiet. Amy's face went pale. "You're saying there are more of them coming?" "Much more," Blake confirmed. "The Krell are pushing toward the core systems. If they reach Earth's inner colonies, billions of people will be at risk. That's why we're here. Not just to save New Haven, but to establish a forward base. We need to stop the Krell here, in the outer rim, before they get any closer to Earth." Jake looked at his exhausted staff, then back at Blake. "Sir, New Haven is a civilian colony. We don't have the facilities to support a major military operation." "You will," Blake said simply. "Starting today, New Haven becomes a fortress. We're bringing in construction crews, defense platforms, ground forces, everything needed to hold this position, because this is where we draw the line." "What do you need from us?" Jake asked. Blake stood up, looking at each person in the room. "Everything. Your knowledge of local space, your people's willingness to fight, your cooperation as we turn this colony into a military base. The Krell will come back, Commander. When they do, we need to be ready. And next time, we're not just defending, we're taking the fight to them." Over the next few days, New Haven transformed completely. Huge construction ships arrived in orbit, carrying prefabricated defense platforms and shield generators. Weapons emplacements were installed at strategic points around the colony. Entire companies of Earth soldiers set up camps outside the main settlement, drilling and preparing for the next attack. Captain Helen Morris found herself attending military strategy meetings with officers who had decades more experience than her. She sat in a conference room with Admiral Blake, Commander Cross, and several other senior officers, feeling completely out of her depth. "Captain Morris," Blake said, pointing to a holographic map of nearby star systems. "You've been stationed here longer than any of us. What can you tell us about Krell attack patterns?" Helen stood up, studying the map. "They prefer to attack during local nighttime. I think they have problems with bright light, or at least they're less effective in it. They also always target power generation first. Take out the power, and the shields go down." "That matches reports from other attacks," Commander Nathan Cross noted. "What about their ground forces?" "Fast and vicious," Helen replied. "They move in perfect coordination, like they're sharing one mind. But if you can kill what we think are command organisms, the smaller ones get confused and disorganized." A new voice spoke from the doorway. "Then we target the command organisms." Everyone turned to see a woman in the black uniform of Special Operations Command. She was tall and athletic, moving with the confidence of someone who had seen the worst and survived. Her name tag read Patterson. "Major Kate Patterson, Special Operations," she introduced herself. "My team specializes in what we call surgical strikes. If the Krell have command creatures, we find them and eliminate them." Blake smiled. "Major Patterson's unit arrived this morning. They're some of Earth's best operators. If we're going to take the fight to the Krell, they'll be leading the way." Kate moved to the holographic display, her eyes scanning the star maps of surrounding systems. "The Krell have to have a staging area somewhere nearby. Somewhere they're gathering forces before attacks. We find that, we hit it hard, and we disrupt their entire operation in this sector. That would mean going deep into Krell territory, Helen said. That's a suicide mission. Kate looked at her with cold, steady eyes. That's what we do, Captain. We go where others can't. We do what others won't. And we come back alive. Admiral Blake nodded with approval. Major Patterson is right. We need intelligence on Krell operations. We need to know where they're coming from, how many there are, and what they're planning next. A reconnaissance mission is our priority. Over the next week, New Haven buzzed with activity. The colony's residents watched in amazement as their home became a military fortress. Children played around the legs of soldiers in powered armor. Engineers worked alongside Earth's construction crews. The line between civilian colony and military base blurred more each day. Jake Morrison walked through the transformed settlement, still trying to process everything that had happened. A week ago, they had been hours from death. Now they were the center of Earth's military operations in the Outer Rim. He found Admiral Blake standing on the rebuilt command center observation deck, looking out over the colony. The Admiral turned as Jake approached. Quite a change, Blake said. That's one way to put it, Jake replied. Admiral, can I ask you something? Why are you really doing this? Earth could have pulled back to the core systems fortified there. Why push out here to the frontier? Blake was quiet for a moment, looking out at the activity below. Because if we only defend the core systems, we're just delaying the inevitable. The Krell will keep coming, keep pushing until they reach Earth itself. But if we stop them here, if we show them that humanity will fight for every colony, every settlement, every single person, then maybe we have a chance. He turned to face Jake directly. Every human life matters, Commander. From Earth's billions to New Haven's thousands. When your distress call came through, there was never any question about. 2 weeks after the battle, a small stealth ship slipped quietly out of New Haven's orbit. The vessel was called Shadowrunner, and it was unlike any ship the colonists had ever seen. It was painted completely black and covered in special materials that made it nearly invisible to sensors. When it moved, it seemed to disappear into space itself. Major Kate Patterson sat in the pilot's seat running through final system checks. Her team sat behind her, each one hand-picked for this mission. Lieutenant Chris Wade was their explosives expert, a quiet man who could turn almost anything into a bomb. Sergeant Emma Brooks handled all communications and electronic systems. Corporal Tyler Grant served as their medic, but he was also the best marksman Kate had ever worked with. And then there was Sergeant Jack Morris, Captain Helen's younger brother who had volunteered despite his sister's strong objections. Final check, Kate said over the internal communication system. We have one chance at this. The Krell will not be expecting us, but that does not mean we can make mistakes. Everyone clear? Systems all green, Emma reported from the sensor station. Stealth field is active and holding strong. As far as any sensor is concerned, we're just another piece of space rock. Chris looked up from checking his equipment bags. I have enough explosives to destroy a small city. If we find what we're looking for, we can do some real damage. Remember, intelligence is the primary mission, Kate reminded them. We need to know how many Krell there are, where they're coming from, and what their next target is. Blowing things up comes second, but still on the list, Jack added with a slight smile. Kate allowed herself a small grin. But still on the list. The journey took 3 days. They followed the path of previous Krell attacks, studying the trails left by their ships. Emma worked continuously at her station, piecing together clues from hyperspace signatures and debris fields. Slowly, carefully, she built a map that led them deeper into unexplored space. On the 3rd day, they found it. Oh no, Chris whispered, staring through the viewport. What is that thing? Ahead of them hung something that should not exist. It was part asteroid, part living creature, part technological nightmare. The structure was enormous, maybe 50 kilometers across. Hundreds of Krell ships clung to its surface like flies on rotting meat. The entire thing pulsed with an eerie, greenish light from thousands of organic veins running through it. That's not just a staging area, Kate said quietly, her tactical mind analyzing what she saw. That's a mobile hive. They're building it as they travel, using resources from asteroids and planets. Emma's fingers moved quickly across her console, gathering data. I'm detecting massive energy readings from the center. And biological signatures, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. That structure is alive and full of Krell warriors. Tyler adjusted his medical scanner, which could also detect biological patterns. There's something else, too. Some kind of signal broadcasting from inside. It's using frequencies I've never seen before. Kate leaned forward, studying the readings. This was bigger than they had expected. Much bigger. Emma, can you record that signal? Everything about it? Already working on it, Emma confirmed. But I need to get closer. The signal is too weak from this distance for proper analysis. Kate knew what that meant. Getting closer meant entering the range where the hive's sensors might detect them. It meant exposing themselves to thousands of enemy ships. It meant risking everything, but that was why they were here. Jack, take us in. Slowly and carefully. Emma, keep that stealth field at maximum power. First sign we're detected, we run. Everyone understand? Affirmatives came back from her team. The Shadow Runner crept forward, moving so slowly that it barely seemed to be flying at all. The closer they got, the more horrifying the hive structure became. It was not just using asteroids for building material. Kate could see the shattered remains of a planet, broken into pieces and being pulled into the hive's center. That's what they do, Jack said, his voice hollow with shock. They don't just attack colonies. They consume entire worlds. How many of these hives are out there? Chris asked. Nobody answered. Nobody wanted to think about the possibility that this was not the only one. Emma suddenly tensed. We have movement. 3 Krell patrol ships approaching from our left side. Hold position, Kate ordered. Let them pass. Do not make any sudden movements. The team watched in tense silence as 3 alien ships drifted past. They were smaller than the attack craft they had fought at New Haven, but still dangerous looking. Their hulls were covered in the same organic armor, and Kate could see movement through transparent sections of their bodies. The patrol ships passed within 100 meters, close enough that Kate could have reached out and touched them if the viewports were open. Her hand stayed steady on the controls, not moving, barely breathing. Finally, the patrol moved away. Clear, Emma said with relief in her voice. Good. Keep recording. I want every detail of this place documented. For 2 hours, they mapped the hive structure. They recorded ship movements, energy patterns, weak points in the structure's armor. Emma worked without stopping, building a complete picture of how the hive operated and communicated. I think I found something important, Emma said suddenly. The command signal I've been tracking is not coming from the hive's outer shell. It's coming from deep inside, from the very center. Something big is in there, coordinating everything. A queen? Tyler suggested. Maybe, or something similar. Whatever it is, it's the brain of this entire operation. If we could destroy it, the whole hive might fall apart. Kate studied the sensor data, her tactical training already forming plans. Can we target it from out here? Get a missile through the hive's defenses? Chris shook his head. Not from this distance. The structure is too dense. Too many layers. We would need to get inside and plant charges manually. That's impossible, Jack said. We would never survive getting in, let alone getting back out. Kate looked at each member of her team. They were good soldiers, the best Earth had. But she could not ask them to attempt a suicide mission. Not yet. Not without more information. We take what we have back to Admiral Blake, she decided. Let him make the call on what to do next. Emma, make absolutely sure all that data is backed up multiple times. We cannot lose this information. As they began to carefully withdraw, alarm sounds suddenly filled the ship. Emma's face went pale. We've been detected. Multiple contacts incoming and closing fast. The stealth field had failed. Or maybe the Krell had sensors that could see through it. Either way, their cover was gone. Jack, full power to engines now, Kate ordered sharply. Get us out of here. The Shadow Runner's engines roared to life, shattering their careful silence. Behind them, dozens of Krell ships detached from the hive and gave chase. They're fast, Jack shouted, pushing the controls as hard as they would go. I cannot shake them. Emma, prepare to jump to hyperspace, Kate commanded. Random coordinates anywhere to break pursuit. Faster than light drive is warming up. 30 seconds, Emma called out. Plasma fire streaked past their hull. One blast hit their rear shields, sending violent shudders through the entire ship. Warning lights flashed on every console. 20 seconds, more hits connected. The ship's system screamed in protest. Shields down to 40%, Tyler reported. Chris grabbed a weapon from the rack. I'm going to the rear gun turret. Maybe I can slow them down. 10 seconds. Hold on, everyone. The ship shook violently as another plasma bolt slammed into their side. Something exploded in the back compartment, filling the air with smoke. 5 seconds, one more hit. Then another. The Shadow Runner was being torn apart. Jump now, Kate ordered. Reality twisted and bent. The stars stretched into long lines of light. Space folded in on itself, and the Shadow Runner leaped into hyperspace, leaving the angry Krell swarm far behind. In the sudden silence that followed, Kate let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Everyone okay?" Sound off. One by one, her team reported in, shaken, bruised, but alive. "Emma, please tell me we got the data. Tell me this was not for nothing." Emma checked her console, then looked up with a tired smile. "All of it. Every scan, every reading, every piece of information about that hive. We have everything." Kate nodded slowly, allowing herself a moment of relief. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had gone into enemy territory, gathered critical intelligence, and made it out alive. Now they knew what humanity was really facing. Now they knew the true scale of the Krell threat, and now they could fight back with real knowledge instead of guesses. "Set course for New Haven," Kate ordered. "Admiral Blake needs to see this. All of it." The Shadow Runner limped through hyperspace, damaged but intact. Behind them, the Krell hive continued its slow movement through space, consuming everything in its path. But now humanity knew it was there. Now humanity knew its weakness. The war was about to change. 3 days later, the Shadow Runner limped back into New Haven's orbit. The ship's hull was scarred with burn marks and its engines were barely functioning. But the data they carried was worth more than the ship itself. Admiral Blake called an emergency meeting of all senior officers. The briefing room was packed. Commander Jake Morrison and Captain Helen Morris stood alongside Earth's military command. Major Kate Patterson stood at the front of the room, her team beside her, while holographic images of the Krell hive rotated above the conference table. "This is what we found," Kate began without wasting time. "Not just a staging area, not just a forward base. A mobile hive that consumes entire planets and uses the resources to build more ships and soldiers." The room was completely silent as the officers stared at the images. The scale of the structure was difficult to comprehend. "How many hives like this exist?" Admiral Blake asked. "Unknown, sir," Kate replied honestly. "But based on the attack patterns we've studied and the spread of Krell forces, we estimate at least 3 in this sector. Maybe more in other parts of space." Commander Jake Morrison leaned forward, studying the rotating image. "Can we destroy it?" "Yes," Kate said with confidence, "but not with normal attacks. The hive's outer structure is too thick and too heavily defended. We would lose half our fleet just trying to break through from the outside." Admiral Blake stood up. "What are you proposing, Major?" Kate pulled up new images, showing internal scans of the hive. "At the center of the structure is what we're calling a nexus. It's biological, possibly intelligent, and it coordinates all Krell activity within range. Our readings suggest that destroying the nexus would cause the entire hive to collapse. The ships would lose coordination, and the structure itself would begin to break apart." Commander Nathan Cross stepped forward, his tactical mind already working through the problem. "You're talking about an infiltration mission. Going inside the hive, fighting through enemy forces, planting explosives at the core, and escaping before it all comes down." "Exactly," Kate confirmed. "But it won't be easy. The hive is full of Krell warriors. We estimate thousands, maybe tens of thousands inside. It will be extremely dangerous." Captain Helen Morris spoke up, her voice tight with concern. "Major, your team barely survived just scanning the place from outside. How can anyone survive going into the middle of it?" Kate met her eyes steadily. "Because this time we're not sneaking around. This time we bring an army." Blake nodded slowly, his decision already forming. "Major Patterson is right. We cannot destroy the hive from outside, so we go in. Commander Cross, start assembling a strike force. I want at least 500 soldiers. Marines, special operations, anyone with real combat experience." 500 against thousands? Jake questioned, sounding doubtful. Blake's expression was hard as steel. "Commander Morrison, you saw what our fleet did to the Krell ships in space. Now you'll see what our ground forces can do. Our soldiers wear powered armor that makes them nearly invincible. They carry weapons that can level buildings. We're not going in hoping to survive. We're going in to win." Over the next week, New Haven became a massive staging ground. Troop transport ships arrived daily from Earth, bringing elite soldiers from every branch of the military. Dropships practiced assault landings on the colony's outskirts. Weapons were distributed, checked, and rechecked. Battle plans were created, studied, and revised dozens of times. Commander Jake Morrison watched it all with growing amazement. He had never imagined military operations on this scale. Thousands of soldiers moving with perfect coordination. Equipment worth more than entire colonies being prepared for a single mission. The day before the assault, Jake found Major Kate Patterson in the armory. She was checking her weapons and armor. The powered suit she wore was sleek black metal covered with equipment and weapons. It made her look like something from a nightmare. "Major, can I ask you something?" Jake said. Kate looked up from inspecting her plasma rifle. "Commander, why are you doing this? Your team could have sent all that data from long range, but you're going in with the assault force. Why take the risk?" Kate was quiet for several seconds. She set down her rifle carefully. 3 years ago, I was stationed at a colony called New Harmony. It was beautiful, peaceful. I had friends there, people I cared about. She looked up at Jake, and he saw old pain in her eyes. The Krell attacked before anyone knew what they were. Before we understood the danger. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. 3,000 people died in less than 6 hours. Kate's hands tightened into fists. I survived because I was away on a training mission. But everyone else, everyone I knew, they died. So yes, I'm going into that hive. Because every Krell I kill is one less that can hurt innocent people. Every mission I complete is one step closer to making sure New Harmony never happens again. Jake nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're fighting for us." Kate picked up her rifle again and smiled grimly. "The Krell should be glad too. At least I'm following rules of engagement. If I had my way, we'd burn every hive we find without mercy." The day of the assault arrived cold and clear. The Earth fleet assembled in orbit, the largest concentration of military power humanity had ever gathered. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the Titan's Hammer, watching his forces make final preparations. "All units report ready, sir," Commander Nathan Cross announced. "The assault force is loaded and waiting for your order." Blake took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Success here would prove humanity could fight the Krell. Failure would mean hundreds of dead soldiers and the loss of momentum in the war. "Send the order," Blake commanded. "All ships jump to the target coordinates. It's time to finish this." Space twisted as the entire fleet activated their faster-than-light drives simultaneously. When they emerged, the Krell hive hung before them, even more massive and terrifying than the images had shown. For a heartbeat, there was perfect silence across all channels. Then Admiral Blake's voice rang out. "This is Admiral Blake to all forces. The Krell have taken too much from humanity. They have destroyed our colonies, killed our people, and threatened everything we've built. Today we show them that humanity fights back. Today we show them the price of threatening Earth's children. All ships attack formation. Open fire." The Earth fleet unleashed everything it had. Railguns fired in thunderous salvos. Missile batteries launched thousands of warheads. Energy weapons carved burning lines across space. The Krell hive's defenses activated, and thousands of enemy ships poured out like disturbed insects from a nest. The largest space battle in human history erupted in minutes. While the capital ships engaged the Krell fleet, assault transports burned toward the hive's surface. Inside one transport, Major Kate Patterson stood with her team and 200 Marines. Every soldier wore powered armor. Everyone carried enough weapons to fight a small war. 30 seconds to insertion. The pilot's voice came over the internal speakers. Kate activated her helmet's communication system. "Listen up. Our target is the Nexus at the hive's core. We fight through anything in our way. We plant the charges. We get out. Stay together, watch your sectors, and trust your training. We're making history today. Let's make sure it's the good kind." The transport shuddered as it punched through the hive's outer shell, tearing a hole into the nightmarish interior. The rear ramp dropped with a hiss, and Kate led the charge into hell itself. The inside of the hive was worse than anything in their briefings. Walls made of living tissue pulsed with strange lights. The air was thick and hard to breathe, full of spores and the smell of rot. And everywhere, covering every surface, were Krell warriors. "Contact," someone shouted, and the corridor exploded into violent chaos. Plasma rifles fired in brilliant flashes of light. Krell warriors, each one a monster of claws and teeth and armored shell, charged the human line with mindless rage. But Earth soldiers were ready. Powered armor absorbed hits that would have killed normal humans. Energy weapons burned through Krell flesh with terrible efficiency. Kate's team led the advance, cutting a brutal path through the defenders. Chris threw explosive charges that cleared entire sections in single blasts. Emma hacked into the hive's biological systems, disrupting Krell communication and sowing confusion. Tyler moved through the chaos, keeping wounded soldiers fighting. They pushed deeper into the hive, following the map Emma had created. Behind them, The rest of the assault force secured their path and fought off endless waves of counterattacks. The hive realized it was being invaded from inside, and every Krell in the structure converged on the human forces. "How much farther?" Kate shouted over the sound of weapons fire and explosions. Emma checked her scanner between shooting at attacking Krell. 200 meters. "There's a large chamber just ahead. That has to be it." They fought for every meter of ground. Soldiers fell, some wounded, some dead, but the advance never stopped. This was humanity at war, not exploring peacefully anymore, not negotiating diplomatically, fighting with everything they had for simple survival. Finally, they burst through into a massive chamber, and there it was, the Nexus. It filled the entire space, a pulsing mass of biological matter the size of a building. Thick veins connected it to every part of the hive, and Kate could feel it watching. 6 months had passed since the first Krell hive fell. 6 months of constant warfare, of battles won and losses mourned. But humanity had not just survived. They had adapted. They had become something new. Commander Jake Morrison walked through New Haven's main street, barely recognizing the place he had defended so desperately half a year ago. Where civilian homes once stood, now there were military barracks. Where children used to play, soldiers now trained. The colony had become what Admiral Blake promised it would be. A fortress on the frontier. But it was not just military personnel filling the streets anymore. New colonists arrived every week, drawn by Earth's promise of protection. Engineers came to build better defenses. Scientists arrived to study the Krell technology salvaged from destroyed hives. Merchants set up shops to supply both military and civilian needs. New Haven was growing, thriving even in ways Jake had never imagined possible. He stopped at what used to be the colony's small cafe. It was now a bustling establishment serving hundreds of customers daily. Inside he found Captain Helen Morris sitting at a corner table with her brother Jack. Both looked tired but content. "Mind if I join you?" Jake asked. "Please do," Helen said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Jack was just telling me about his latest mission." Jack grinned. He wore the black uniform of Special Operations now, having proven himself repeatedly in combat. "We found another Hive 3 systems over. Smaller than the first one, maybe 20 kilometers across. Major Patterson's team went in, planted the charges, and we were out in under 2 hours." "How many did we lose?" Jake asked quietly. Jack's smile faded. 8 soldiers. All volunteers. All knew the risks. Helen reached across the table and squeezed her brother's hand. "Every life lost hurts. But think about how many we've saved. The intelligence reports say we've prevented at least 6 colony attacks by destroying those hives before they could organize." Jake nodded. The mathematics of war were brutal but simple. Trade 8 lives to save thousands. It was the right choice strategically, but that did not make it easier emotionally. A shadow fell across their table. Admiral Blake stood there in his working uniform, looking surprisingly informal.
"May I join you?"
"Of course, Admiral," Jake said, surprised to see Blake away from the command center. Blake sat down heavily, looking older and more tired than Jake remembered. "I wanted to talk to you 3 specifically. You represent something important. Commander Morrison, you're the colonial officer who held the line. Captain Morris, you've integrated your security forces with our military perfectly. And Sergeant Morris, you've become one of our best operators." He paused. "I want your honest opinions on something." "Sir?" Helen prompted. Blake leaned forward, his voice low. "We've destroyed 7 Krell hives in 6 months. We've pushed them back across 3 sectors. Our intelligence suggests the main Krell force is retreating toward the Galactic Rim. By every metric, we're winning this war. But," Jack asked, sensing the unspoken concern. "But I'm not sure what we're becoming in the process," Blake admitted. "Earth has mobilized like never before. We're building warships faster than exploration vessels. We're training soldiers instead of scientists. Every resource, every decision, everything is focused on war. I wonder if we can ever go back to being explorers and peaceful colonists." Jake considered the question carefully. "With respect, Admiral, I don't think we can go back. The galaxy showed us it's not safe. We can't unlearn that lesson." "Maybe we shouldn't want to go back," Helen added. "We were naive before, vulnerable. Yes, we've become militarized, but that militarization saved countless lives, including everyone on New Haven." Jack spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "My team talks about this sometimes. None of us wanted to become soldiers. But someone had to stand between the Krell and innocent people. I'd rather live in a galaxy where humanity is strong enough to defend itself than one where we're peaceful but helpless. Blake listened to each of them, then nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. I needed to hear that perspective. Across the colony in the expanded command center, Commander Nathan Cross was conducting a strategic briefing with officers from a dozen different ships. The holographic display showed a map of known space, with red markers indicating Krell positions and blue markers showing human forces. Our scout ships have located what appears to be the main Krell concentration, Nathan explained, pointing to a cluster of red markers near the galactic rim. Intelligence estimates between 15 and 20 hives in this region. It's the largest gathering of enemy forces we've seen. A ship captain raised his hand. Are we planning an assault on that position? Eventually, Nathan confirmed. But not yet. We need more ships, more soldiers, more resources. An operation of that scale could take a year or more to prepare. Another officer spoke up. What about the Krell? Will they wait for us to be ready or will they attack first? Unknown, Nathan admitted. Which is why we're maintaining aggressive patrols and destroying any smaller hive groups we find. We're keeping them off balance, preventing them from organizing another major offensive. The briefing continued for another hour, covering logistics, supply lines, personnel rotations, and 100 other details that kept the war machine functioning. When it finally ended, Nathan felt exhausted. Command was rewarding but draining in ways combat never was. Major Kate Patterson found him in the corridor afterward. Commander Cross, do you have a moment? Of course, Major. What do you need? Kate pulled out a datapad and handed it to him. This is something my team discovered during our last reconnaissance mission. We found debris from a destroyed Krell ship. Not destroyed by us. Destroyed by something else. Nathan studied the images on the pad. The wreckage showed damage patterns unlike anything human weapons would create. Are you suggesting there's another species fighting the Krell? I'm suggesting we might not be alone in this war, Kate said carefully. The Krell have been expanding for who knows how long. They must have made other enemies. If we can find them, maybe we can form alliances, share intelligence and tactics. Nathan handed back the pad, his mind already working through the possibilities. This needs to go to Admiral Blake immediately. If there are potential allies out there, we need to find them. Already sent the report, Kate confirmed, but I wanted to tell you personally. We're moving beyond just defending ourselves. We're becoming a real military power in this region of space. That comes with new responsibilities. And new opportunities, Nathan added. Good work, Major. Keep looking for evidence of these other species. That evening, Admiral Blake called another meeting. This one was different from the tactical briefings and strategy sessions. This was just Blake, Jake, Helen, Nathan, and Kate, sitting in a small conference room with the door closed. I've been thinking about our conversation earlier, Blake began, looking at Jake, Helen, and Jack. About what humanity is becoming. And I've made a decision. He pulled up a document on the room's display. I'm recommending to Earth's government that we formalize the defense of the frontier colonies. Not as a temporary military operation, but as a permanent mission. We establish a dedicated frontier defense force, combining military protection with support for colonization and exploration. A hybrid organization, Nathan said, understanding immediately. Military strength when needed, but focused on building and protecting rather than just fighting. Exactly, Blake confirmed. We can't go back to being naive explorers, but we don't have to become purely a war machine either. We can be both defenders and builders. Kate leaned forward. What about contact with other species? My team found evidence of aliens fighting the Krell. Should we try to establish diplomatic relations? Carefully and cautiously, Blake replied. But yes. The galaxy is bigger than just humans and Krell. We need to learn who else is out there and whether they're potential friends or future threats. Helen spoke up. What will this mean for colonies like New Haven? Will we stay militarized or can we return to normal civilian life? Both, Blake said. New Haven and colonies like it will maintain defensive capabilities and small military garrisons. But we'll also encourage civilian growth, trade, and development. You'll be defended colonies, not military bases. Jake felt relief wash over him. The idea of New Haven having a future beyond constant warfare was more appealing than he wanted to admit. When will this new organization be established? That depends on Earth's government approval, Blake said. But I'm optimistic. The successful defense of the frontier has strong public support. People want their military protecting colonists, not just core world interests. Over the next few months, Blake's proposal worked its way through Earth's government. There were debates, amendments, and political maneuvering. But eventually, the Frontier Defense Force was approved and established. Admiral Blake was named its first commander, with Nathan Cross as his second-in-command. The change was more than just organizational. It represented a shift in how humanity saw itself among the stars, not as helpless victims needing protection, not as aggressive conquerors seeking dominance, but as a civilization that could defend itself while still pursuing peaceful exploration and growth. New Haven became the headquarters of the Frontier Defense Force. The colony expanded rapidly, adding residential areas alongside military facilities. Schools opened for